Hello and welcome to a tutorial or more of a walkthrough for the dynamic selection wheel. So in this video we're going to be going over some of the stuff that you get with the dynamic selection wheel, like user variables, functions, all that kind of stuff, and some stuff that you can do with the dynamic selection wheel and some of the inner workings. But I won't be going over a whole bunch of aesthetic stuff that you can do in this. I'll be doing some more tutorials that'll cover example wheels that I'll be doing that'll show you how to modify the wheel to more to what you need. So check back for those later, but for now we're just going over what you get when you buy the wheel. So when you first get the wheel, you should get either a folder that you can add to a project or a project itself that you can then migrate the dynamic selection wheel. Just right-click and migrate the entire thing. So in this folder, what you get is all these different folders with stuff inside them. But anything that you see that's labeled example is something that you can delete without affecting the performance of the dynamic selection wheel. So any stuff like this or anything in this folder can be deleted, or nothing in this because there's no example widgets, but you can delete any of this example stuff and it won't affect the performance of the dynamic selection wheel. So I'm going to go ahead and I'll jump back into the example character, and we can see all the code that goes into this. Now, really, all this is this stuff right here is just examples of different ways to add or remove or do stuff in game that I have set up and that you can see. We can go in game and we can see what most of them do, like QP. They add and remove segments. So if we go in and we play and we open the selection wheel, which for now is bound to F if you need to know that, but just add and remove segments with a P&O, sorry, not being Q. So that's that, and you can add all kinds of different stuff. This is just like a random gun, quotation marks, because I have a gun system set up with this, and it just basically changes the color of the gun that you're holding to notify you that you have different ones, which, yeah. So right here is where we set all the variables and stuff. You don't really need this, just as long as you have somewhere that you add and remove the widget to the viewport and you create it and all that kind of stuff. But this is the most useful part of it, because this is where you add and remove, and this is where most of the stuff happens, because this is the dynamic selection or the selection wheel macro. Basically, all you need is this node right here and anything that you want to put into it. You don't need any controller stuff if you're not doing controller support, so you can just ignore anything below this controller marker right there. But all you need is this macro and a way to add and remove the wheel from your viewport to make the dynamic selection wheel work. This is all just that slow-mo and blur stuff that happens in the background while the dynamic selection wheel is open. You don't need that. You can customize that to whatever you want it to be in whatever way that you want it to be. Right here we have, this is what happens after you have selected an item and closed the wheel. So anytime you select something, then this is what will happen. So right now I have it on an equip, and I have this branch is just a test to make sure that anything that the slot that you have found is populated, and if it's not, it's just going to unequip the gun. So if you don't have any unpopulated slots, then it'll work perfectly fine and equip it. You actually don't even need this because it'll just keep any gun that's equipped. So right here is just a basic equip function that uses a color from this structure. So anything that you want to pass through the selection wheel, and it can kind of be used to store stuff too, kind of almost like an inventory, but not really. And you can add an item structure or just something that you need to pass through. So since mine was color here for the equip, then color's going to be there. You can delete that if you want to. But you don't want to delete the name or the image. Those two things need to stay there. And so anything that anything item-wise that you want to pass through the wheel, it'll pass through via this structure. So if I go down here and you see the add selection to wheel or add selection to wheel here, that is adding the structure which I have made here. So anytime you want to add something to the wheel, you also have to do it through the structure, so you'll have to add it that way. I think that covers everything in the character. So let's go ahead and we'll go ahead and jump over. let's jump over to the actual selection wheel. So most of the whatever you're doing is going to happen in the selection wheel widget, because that is where I put it. This is a README file that I made really quick. You can read it, but I'm going to go over most of the stuff that happens there. So anything that I went over in the character already, that these are user functions that I have pre-made that can help you usually accomplish anything that you're going to want to do with the selection wheel. So those are stored over here, and you can add segments, subtract segments, add a selection on the wheel, remove a selection from the wheel, remove a specific selection from the wheel. All kinds of different stuff that you can do are already done here in the user functions, and that should cover most of the stuff that you would want to do. Next up is user variables. These things modify the aesthetic of the selection wheel. So you can define how many segments you want it to be at the beginning, and then if you want it to be hard-coded to that, you just don't use an add or remove selection, so it'll be hard-coded to that. You can choose whether or not to have dividers, so I'm going to uncheck that. I'm just going to make it the reverse, or something different than what's already there, so that we can see like a difference. Rotate slots upright. Will rotate this the slots so that the bottom of them are always equal to the bottom of the screen. So I'll go ahead and uncheck that, and then they'll all be rotated to look to the center of the wheel. The size multiplier is the size of the slots, so we can double that up, or let's do a triple so you can see what it looks like. The size dynamically, once it gets to a certain amount of slots, it'll size it down or up depending on how many slots you have. So I'll go ahead and uncheck that so we can see what that looks like. The location, you can just move it to the left, right, up, down, whatever you want, and I'll just go ahead and I'll do 500 by 500. For this stuff, the location, scale, and shear, you might not want to do this in here, but you can. So I'll go ahead and I'll double this, and I'll double this. Shear right now, as I have right here, the tooltip, this does not work with the dividers. So if you have dividers unchecked, then it should look fine. But if you want to use dividers with your selection wheel, then I would suggest not using the shear, because I have not gotten that to work yet. I'll go ahead and, since I'm not using dividers, I'll go ahead and do a 3 shear in each direction. And then rotate selected info upright. You can ignore that. It's just if you rotate the wheel, which I don't think I have as a user variable right now. It's that's the thing that I'm working on. It rotates the info in the middle to face the bottom rather than whichever way the wheel is rotated. And then center slots on top, that depends on whether you have one slot in the middle of the top, or if a divider is centered in the top. So I'll go ahead and I'll uncheck center slots on top, and we'll see how that goes. And I'll save and compile, and these should go through. Yeah, see, now it's shear double-sized, and it's moved down there. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to change location to, let's do -500, and see if that moves it up so we can see it better. Play F. I'm going to scale it down back to 1, because that way we can see it. Oh, it's still really far up there. Okay, I'll go ahead and do -250. Okay, now we can see most of it. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to press B and add slots to it. So now you can see there's 16 slots. It's not sizing dynamically, so that so they're all the same size, and they're all rotated towards the center. If I go ahead and I'm going to go ahead and go back, and I'm going to change size dynamically back to true. That way you can actually see. Save, compile, F, and now B, and now they're all sized to dynamic size. So if I go ahead and I get rid of some slots, you'll be able to see it better. Okay, there we go. Now you can see all the different slots, and they're all rotated towards the center. And if I had dividers, you could see this that there's the slots aren't on the top. So if I go back and I change center on slots on top to be true, and I save and compile and play, you'll now see that there is a slot in the center instead of one on each side of the top. So that pretty much covers the user variables, I believe. I'll go ahead and I don't want to go through any of the functions that I have in here, any of this stuff, because you already know, or you'll get this and you'll see it, and it's for the most part fully commented, so you'll know what is going on where and how and stuff like that. So if you do see any uncommented things, those are generally because either it's something that you don't need to be looking at and it's inconsequential, or the name or the nodes themselves are self-explanatory to what it does, and just that kind of stuff, or it's something that I'll cover in a tutorial later on if I missed something or something like that. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go back and jump over. Let's go to a wheel slot, because that's where some more stuff is done. If you this is where everything is updated as far as the image or other stuff is going on. You can add when you go into the slot. Here's the slot. So if I this is where the gun image is on the selection wheel that rotates around. This is where you would change something like add a name underneath it, or add an ammo counter, or whatever or an amount, something like that. Anything that you want to add, you would add it in here in the info for the thing. So you would first add whatever it is. Like if it's a name, you'd add a text box right there, and then you'd go over here and you'd bind that text box to a variable that you then set in. Here with something that comes from the slot info, like a name. You could do that. So anything that happens there, that's where you would do that. Now I'm going to go back to the selection wheel really quick and go to the designer, because it's the same exact thing for this hover info, or the selected info in the center. That's where you would put a name or ammo, or a progress bar for like a weapon level, or an amount for something. Anything that you want, you would put it here in the center with a text box or whatever, and then you'd bind that to a variable, and then you would find, I believe it's a builder function. Let me find it. Update selected info. You would do it in here. So you'd get the selected info and then you'd update it. So like the selected name right here, it's a name. And you'd make a variable and bind that to whatever you have in the center, and then set that variable here. So that's how you do that. I'll go over all that stuff and show you how to actually do that in other tutorials. But I'm going to go ahead and go back to my browser, and I'm going to go to the only thing that I believe I have left. Oh, here's the selection wheel slot structure. This is where you would add anything that you wanted to pass through, like I said earlier. And here is the selection macro. So this is that macro that I was talking about, and the macro that makes it super, I hope, super user-friendly. And like the only node that you need is that. That's this macro. All it does is it calls some functions from the wheel, and then passes stuff through, chooses. If you don't want your mouse cursor to show through, mouse cursor to show during when the wheel is up, like here, I'll show you. Yeah, see here's my mouse cursor in the middle of the screen. If you don't want that to show, then you'll just do that, and then save, play, F, and now it's not showing, and you can rotate around it without it doing anything. So that's where you turn that off, or you can just delete the nodes completely and just connect them to wherever they need to go. So I think that covers most of the basic functions. You can tune back, or you can come back later for any more information that you will need, and I'll go over in other tutorials, and I'll show you how to actually change the aesthetics and stuff like that of the wheel. And I think that's it. So I'll go over examples, like I said, later in other tutorials. And let me just double check and make sure that is everything. Yeah. Okay, so thanks for watching, and I hope this helped with any questions that you had about the dynamic selection wheel. Like I said earlier, check back for other tutorials if you still have unanswered questions, and go ahead and go to the forum posting on the that I have on the dynamic selection wheel, and suggest anything that you might have not seen in this tutorial or other tutorials that I should cover, or that I need to cover, or that you need help with, or any bugs that you might find with it when this actually comes out. So, thanks for watching. Bye.